When the enemy is relaxed, make them toil. When full, starve them. When settled, make them move.
TJ versus Sterling. What do you guys think? TJ did an interview on this, and he said, Sterling's an easy fight for me. He's not championship caliber. Now, he didn't go into detail, but I wish that he would. He either gets the takedown or he uses the takedown as a threat, gets met with resistance, comes off with strikes, distracts you, goes right back into it. Rinse and repeat the entire time.
The co-main event of UFC 280 sees a bantamweight title fight with some bad blood behind it. A grudge match at 135 pounds, if you could say so. It's a battle between the current reigning defending bantamweight champion who just defended his title against Petr Yan in the rematch at UFC 273, and Aljamain the Funkmaster Sterling, who comes into the fight with a record of 21 victories and 3 defeats, with only one loss coming by way of finish when he got KO'd by Magic Marlon Moraes. And on the other side, you have the former 2-time UFC bantamweight champion who served a suspension after testing positive for erythropoietin or EPO, which was the same thing that Lance Armstrong got suspended for during his cycling days. And he's coming back after that win over Corey Sandhagen when he came off of suspension in a fight that a lot of people believed that Corey Sandhagen probably did enough to get 3 out of the 5 rounds. But needless to say, it was a win for Dillashaw over the Sandman. And now you have 2 of the most dominant UFC bantamweights, 2 of the most decorated 135 pounders on the planet, going at it in the co-main event in Abu Dhabi. The Funkmaster Aljamain Sterling is probably one of the most hated UFC champions on the roster. And that's not me saying that I hate Aljamain, and that's not me saying that I don't believe that Aljamain should have won the title at UFC 273 in that rematch. I believe Aljamain is a phenomenal fighter. He's one of the best grapplers and one of the strongest individuals when the fights hit the mat in all of the UFC and in all of that 135-pound UFC's bantamweight division. I mean, you could see it just by the way he was able to take Petr Yan down, take his back, and manage to control him, which led him to win that fight. And then if you go back and look at the fight against Corey Sandhagen, Sterling was immediately able to put on the pressure, push Sandhagen back, get him into the body lock, shuck him forward, take his back, sink the hooks in, and lock up a standing rear naked choke and submit Sandhagen in the first round. And after that fight, the only losses that Sandhagen had suffered was to TJ Dillashaw and also to Petr Yan. I mean, Aljamain is definitely the most decorated grappler at 135 pounds, but even though he's a solid jiu-jitsu artist and great standout wrestler, I don't think that grappling is going to do him too many favors against a guy who moves as well, switches stances as seamlessly, and throws combinations as effectively as Dillashaw TJ Dillashaw. And I know I call him Dillashaw, but you know, that's what a lot of people like to call him. Just ask Daniel Cormier, Dillashaw, Dalla Billashaw. But Dillashaw's striking, footwork, movement, ability to chain combinations together while switching stances and cutting angles on the opponent that puts them into a tornado of concoctive violence that they can't seem to get out of. I mean, he's one of the best to ever do it, and he's one of the best strikers in all of mixed martial arts, and he was really one of the first fighters to ever utilize the stance switches, the same side cross high kicks, and being able to flow between stances and combinations seamlessly. And he can also use those stance switches to set up stance switch takedowns like we saw utilized in the fight with Rose Namajunas and Zhang Weili, and also Rose Namajunas versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk 2, where she was able to use that stance switch from orthodox to southpaw to wrap around the lead leg with the former rear leg and take the opponent down. Dillashaw showcased that tenfold in the fight against John Lineker at UFC 207, where the main event was Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt. But his ability to switch stances, his ability to switch stance and get takedowns, switch stance and use outside trips, you know, he can move so effectively that you don't really know what his next move is going to be. And he was able to showcase that in the Corey Sandhagen fight as well. Whenever Sandhagen tried to land that spinning back kick, spinning back fist, you know, spinning elbows and wheel kicks, every time he would turn his back, Dillashaw would follow him, track his movement, and then lock him up in a body lock and get him up against the cage, which in turn led him to win rounds and also be able to score some pretty good position dominance over the Sandman, which is definitely what led him to win that fight, even though I thought Sandhagen edged him out, but that's besides the point. When you look at the style matchup between these two and how they clash inside the octagon, the one thing that stands out to me is Dillashaw has never been submitted in his mixed martial arts career. And although you could say at the same time that he's never faced a person who's as good at jiu-jitsu as Aljamain Sterling, which I would probably tend to agree with you on, I still think that that's an important and interesting statistic to look at going into this fight. You know, it's not going to be easy for Sterling to push TJ back. It's not going to be easy for Sterling to get those takedowns. It's not going to be easy to get the back of Dillashaw when Dillashaw is constantly feinting in and out, changing angles, constantly switching stances, and moving around with that hypnotic movement to set traps while he's on the feet. It's going to be harder for Sterling to track down the movement of Dillashaw in order to set up those grappling exchanges because of how much he moves, like we already mentioned. But at the same time, I think that a way to combat that beauty type of striking and that beautiful technical striking that Dillashaw likes to use is to put the pressure on a guy like TJ by moving forward, by using those front kicks, deep kicks to the body, the jab, front kick, lead elbow, switch stance, rear elbow, lead up elbow to get to the body lock, and the constant funky striking that the Funkmaster likes to use as a champion and as a challenger. That's kind of the way you have to combat it, but it's just going to be difficult to get through to TJ because of how much he's able to set you up and get the outside angle, get the outside foot. But at the same time, like I said, the pressure that Sterling imposes on his opponents is kind of the way you have to combat the technical striking style of a TJ. And, you know, I think that if anybody can do it, it's definitely Sterling, but it's an uphill battle for the champion in this fight, in my opinion. And Sterling's no stranger to being doubted and counted out. I think he's definitely one of the most doubted, along with probably one of the most disliked champions inside the organization. But if he gets through TJ and does so impressively, if he's able to lock up a submission after taking the back, or being able to lock him up in a Suluev stretch, kind of like he did to Cody Stamann back in the day, I mean, a win here over the former champion in TJ Dillashaw, and also having a win over Petr Yan in the rematch, it would just continue to raise the stock of the champion, who would bank another title defense under his belt. But if I'm going to be completely honest, I think that this is a very difficult stylistic matchup for Aljamain Sterling. I definitely see areas where he can win if he's able to combat the tricky technical setups of a Dillashaw on the feet with his forward pressure, awkward striking combinations, and ability to set up takedowns from awkward angles and work from the body lock, or the backpack, as he is the backpack strangler like he was in the fight against Corey Sandhagen. That's definitely the path of least resistance for Aljamain Sterling to remain and still. However, like I said, I really am leaning towards TJ here. I think that his defensive wrestling, his awkward angles, his footwork, his in and out movement is going to make it harder for Sterling to use his forward pressure to set up those takedowns. And if the takedowns aren't there for Sterling and it has to be a completely striking matchup, I expect him to get lit up on the feet. I expect Dillashaw to just be way too much for him from a technical striking standpoint and probably gain another signature finish under his belt. However, like I said, if he does get his back, if he does get him to the mat, Dillashaw is going to be in a world of trouble. But either way, this fight is absolutely fantastic. It's a great co-main event, and it's definitely going to tell us who's probably the best bantamweight in the entire world when it comes to mixed martial arts, and definitely inside of the UFC. As long as your name's not Petr Yan, because don't think I forgot about Mr. No Mercy. But I can't wait for this fight, and I think all the fans are eagerly anticipating how this fight will play out. And will it be the Funkmaster, or will it be Dillashaw who walks out as the 135-pound kingpin in Abu Dhabi?